to meeting number 14 of the House of Commons Standing Committee on Industry, Science and Technology. Today's meeting is taking place in a hybrid format pursuant to the House Order of January 25th, 2021. The proceedings will be made available via the House of Commons website. So you are aware the webcast will always show the person speaking rather than the entirety of the committee. To ensure an orderly meeting, I would like to outline a few rules to follow. Members and witnesses may speak in the official language of their choice. Interpretation services are available for this meeting. You have the choice at the bottom of your screen of either floor, English, or French. If the translation is not working, please signal it to me so that we can make sure that it gets fixed. Before speaking, please wait until I recognize you by name. If you are on the video conference, please click on the microphone icon to unmute yourself. A reminder that all comments by members and witnesses should be addressed through the chair. When you are not speaking, your mic should be on mute. And for the sake of interpretation, I ask that you please not speak over the witnesses, wait your turn, and then pose your questions so that we can make sure we have translation. With regard to a speaking list, the committee clerk and I will do our best to maintain the order of speaking for all members, whether you are participating virtually or in person. As is my normal practice, I will hold up the yellow card for when you have 30 seconds remaining in your intervention, and the red card for when your time for questions has expired. Pursuant to Standing Order 1082 and the motion adopted by the committee on Tuesday, December 1st, 2020, the committee is meeting today to commence its study on the domestic manufacturing capacity for COVID-19 vaccine. I'd like to now welcome our witnesses. With us today, we have the Honorable Patty Hajdu, Minister of Health. From Public Health Agency of Canada, Mr. Ian Stewart, President, and from the Department of Health, Stephen Lucas, Deputy Minister. Each witness will present for up to 7 minutes, followed by the rounds of questions. And with that, we will start with Minister Hajdu. You have the floor for 7 minutes.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I assume that you can hear me. Thumbs up if you can. Yes? Okay, great. Well, I do appreciate this opportunity to speak with you and the committee about the Government of Canada's response to the COVID-19 pandemic. And while the issue of domestic manufacturing capacity is outside the purview of my role as Minister of Health, I am happy to speak about the work our government is doing to ensure that Canadians have access to safe and effective vaccines. First, I'd like to begin with an update on vaccine distribution. Comme vous le savez, les vaccins de Pfizer et de Moderna ont été homologués au Canada et sont maintenant distribués à l'échelle du pays. So far, we have secured a total of 80 million doses of these two vaccines. And of these, 1.1 million doses have already been delivered to the provinces and territories. And although the delays recently announced by Pfizer will have a short-term impact on vaccine rollout, we're still on track to receive the full 4 million doses we were expecting by the end of March. And this would bring the total of doses received both by Pfizer and Moderna to 6 million by the end of the first quarter. And then starting in April, the pace will accelerate with at least 20 million doses delivered between April and June.
Madame la Présidente, point d'ordre, la traduction ne se fait pas.
Okay, one moment. We're just going to double check. We're
Pas de
having
problème, je
difficulty.
vous écoute attentivement.
Est-ce que ça fonctionne? Is it working, Sébastien? Parfait. Go ahead, Minister.
Okay. C'est à ce moment que la campagne de vaccination de masse.
And that's when the vaccine campaign will start across the country. We cooperate with the provinces, territories, and our Indigenous partners to prepare for this next phase.
A vaccine for every Canadian by the end of September 2021, even if no other vaccine is authorized for use in Canada. But we are expecting other vaccines to be authorized in the months to come, providing, of course, that they meet Health Canada's strictest standards for safety, efficacy, and quality. Given the urgency of the pandemic, we put in place measures to safely expedite the authorization process. We now accept rolling submissions for vaccines, which means that manufacturers can submit data as it becomes available instead of having to wait until all clinical studies are completed and then submitting en masse at the end. It was through this expedited process that Pfizer and Moderna vaccinations were authorized. Health Canada is now reviewing vaccines by AstraZeneca and Janssen using the same process. And we expect to receive more submissions in the weeks to come. We are ready should any other vaccine candidates be approved.
We have signed agreements with 7 different companies to reserve COVID-19 vaccine, with an option of expanding those orders later, as we did recently with Pfizer.
Was informed by the advice of the COVID-19 vaccine task force has enabled us to secure a range of vaccine candidates early on, as it was not possible in the beginning to know which vaccine would be the most effective or available first. And the signed agreements include up to 76 million doses of Pfizer-BioNTech's vaccine, up to 40 million doses of Moderna's vaccine, and up to 72 million doses of Sanofi GlaxoSmithKline's vaccine, up to 38 million doses from Johnson & Johnson, up to 76 million doses from Novavax, up to 76 million doses from Medicago, and finally up to 20 million doses from AstraZeneca. Today, I've mentioned the actions that we're taking right now to ensure that Canadians have timely access to a COVID-19 vaccine. But at the same time, we are looking to the future. Early in the pandemic, the Government of Canada recognized how biomanufacturing capabilities are critical to securing access to equipment, supplies, medicines, and vaccines. From a health portfolio perspective, a robust domestic biomanufacturing sector is critical for strengthening Canada's position to respond to this and future health crises, and to maintain a dependable supply of safe and effective vaccines and therapies in the long term. And this is why I give my full support to our government's initiatives to build this capacity, which Minister Champagne will describe when he appears before the committee. In Canada, we are fortunate to have some of the best vaccination programs and regulatory approval systems in the world. With these systems already in place, we were able to act quickly at the beginning of the pandemic to ensure that when a COVID-19 vaccine was ready, Canada was ready. Ces systèmes bien établis.
These well-established systems, built over many decades, will serve us well as we vaccinate Canadians against COVID-19.
Opportunity to build and strengthen this infrastructure so that we can be as prepared as possible for any public health crisis that might arise in the future. Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much, Minister. I now turn the floor over to Mr. Stewart. You have the floor for 7 minutes.
Okay, thank you very much, Madam Chair. Can you hear me?
Yep.
All good? Okay. So thank you for inviting me to speak with you today. I have the honor of serving as the president of the Public Health Agency. I started on September 28th, 2020, and I'm pleased to be here to talk about what we're doing with respect to procuring vaccines and vaccine rollout. As the Minister of Health noted, domestic manufacturing capacity in Canada is not part of the Public Health Agency's mandate. So I'll focus on securing safe and effective vaccines for all Canadians in my remarks in our capacity here. Since the beginning of the pandemic, there's been with provinces and territories, as well as Indigenous communities, about rolling out the vaccine to coordinate a pan-Canadian response. What we're trying to do, of course, is protect the health and safety of all people in Canada, while prioritizing the first limited number of vaccines to high-risk populations. And we've been focused on trying to minimize serious illness and overall mortalities while limiting societal disruptions. With regard to acquiring COVID vaccines, we were guided by the COVID-19 Vaccine Task Force, and that task force advice led the Government of Canada to secure enough doses to provide vaccines to all Canadians. Minister INDU has just run through the procurements that have been lined up and put underway. The principles guiding the use of the vaccines have been focusing on science-driven decision-making, transparency, coherence, and adaptability, as well as fairness and equity. and consistency in reporting. These principles continue to guide us, as well as a reliance on science experts and public health expertise to make sure Canadians have safe COVID vaccines as they're available. The vaccine acquisition strategy is intended to mitigate various risks to vaccine supply. So far, as Minister Hajdu mentioned, we have 2 vaccines that we've procured a total of 80 million doses for. These are 2-dose vaccines, so that's enough to immunize 40 million people. And so the entire population, based on the procurement schedules to date, it should be sufficient to do so this year. And these, of course, are approved vaccines by the Health Canada regulator. To date, well, actually, as of January 21st, Canada has delivered over 1.1 million vaccine doses, and the provinces are very close now to having administered to Canadians their millionth dose against the schedule. I think probably, as the committee knows, Pfizer deliveries will slow down for a few weeks because the manufacturers indicated they need to do some retooling on their production plant, and they will deliver on their commitment to provide 4 million doses by the end of this first quarter. The Pfizer CEO confirmed to the Prime Minister that they're on track to do so. Last week, the Prime Minister announced the latest vaccine shipment from Moderna also will contain fewer doses than originally expected. Here too, the company has also reassured him that they will provide the 2 million doses that they're contracted for by the end of March. So in total, we're on track to deliver 6 million doses of Moderna and Pfizer by the end of March 2021. In support of enabling the provinces and territories to do their vaccine rollout, we purchased a range of ancillary supplies, needles, syringes, wipes, sharps containers, and so on, sufficient for their immunization efforts. And we've distributed out to the provinces their supplies in this regard this quarter. And we also have advanced purchase agreements in addition to Pfizer and Moderna, as Minister Hajdu set out, with 5 other vaccine candidates, 3 of which are currently now progressing through regulatory trials here in Canada. Janssen, AstraZeneca, and Novavax on Friday began that process. We have agreements with all of these vaccines and significant acquisitions lined up. The vaccine candidates were selected from a number of different companies covering a broad range of technologies. The idea of having different technologies was to minimize risk, as was having a variety of companies, each with their own supply chain, and also guided by trying to secure the earliest delivery that we could. The idea was that we would have sufficient vaccine available to immunize all Canadians free of charge. This was guided, as I mentioned, by the Vaccine Task Force. There are a lot of uncertainties. I think Pfizer and Moderna reflect kind of the manufacturing uncertainties that are involved. And also at the time of negotiation of the APAs, it of course was not clear which ones would have successful clinical trials, nor which ones would be approved by the regulator. So we've been relying on an evidence-based supply strategy to ensure we have vaccines in sufficient quantities. In addition, Health Canada's robust process for regulatory authorization provides Canadians with assurances that the vaccines available to them are safe and effective. Here at the Public Health Agency, along with our partners in the scientific and health community, we will now be continuing to monitor the vaccines as they're rolled out. We have a well-established system for monitoring vaccine safety, and we're tracking it closely. As we learn more about COVID every day, we also need to continue to learn more about the vaccines and the transmission of the virus. And so we'll continue to rely on the science community and the medical health community to guide us in that regard. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Stewart. And with that, we will start our rounds of questions. Our first round of questions goes to MP Rempel-Gardner. You have the floor for 6 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll direct my questions to Mr. Stewart. My understanding is that the Novavax purchase agreement was originally announced on August 31st of 2020. I'm looking at an email that was produced in documents that were released to the Health Committee on Friday, and it's between the emails between a Brian Blom, who is the Director of Communications for Public Works, I believe, and Roy Cecily, who is a Press Secretary in Public Works. And it's an email that's going through, I guess, various iterations of the press release related to the Novavax purchase agreement announcement. And Mr. Blom says, "Hi, Cecily, removed reference to NRC component of Novavax MOU." I'm just wondering, as you were the head of the NRC at that point in time, why the NRC pulled out of a production deal in August, or why that reference was removed.
The NRC is still in discussions with a number of companies, and so I'm not sure that, in fact, there's been a removal of the relationship. I can't really speak to what was included in a PSPC communications interchange, but I think Mitch Davies, who's the current president, is appearing before your committee tomorrow
Thank
or
you.
Thursday.
It's just there's a lot of questions today in the media because the Novavax contract or the announcement today has the NRC facility only producing on best schedule the first dose of that vaccine in late July. So I'm just trying to understand if there was a conscious decision made by yourself to not include um, production agreement at the time that the purchase agreement was announced last year, because that's a lot of months that we technically could have been producing vaccines, right?
Well, the production of vaccines requires a facility that is able to manufacture, and the NRC is in fact building such a facility. And Mitch Davies can talk to you about how that's progressing. The relationship you're referring with Novavax, you're assuming it's a manufacturing relationship, but it could have been other things as well. The NRC, of course, is a research organization and does research contracts with clients.
So you don't recall why the reference to the NRC was pulled out of the original announcement with Novavax?
There's an ongoing discussion with Novavax, and Mitch Davies is probably better placed to talk about how that's evolving.
Under your tenure, did you complete negotiations for the production of Novavax at the NRC facility?
As I just mentioned, the NRC is in the process of building a manufacturing capacity. That's not yet complete.
Do you recall if that happened? I just would like to get a clear answer.
You're asking me to clarify why PSPC removed something from a communications
No,
document based on internal emails, and I don't know the answer to that.
I was just asking under your tenure if there was a formal working relationship, either for production vaccine or others, if you could specify what that was, developed with Novavax. And if it was under negotiation, why it wasn't included in the August 31st announcement.
As I've said a few times, there is an ongoing discussion with Novavax, and why it didn't end up in the PSPC press release, I don't know.
When will the first dose of the Novavax vaccine be produced at the new NRC facility?
Well, the NRC is in the process of building out their manufacturing capability, and Mitch Davies would be able to speak to whether they're still on track for the timetable.
As the head of public health agency, you don't know when the first dose of Novavax would be produced at the NRC facility.
That's right. The public health agency is not involved in the production of or manufacturing of vaccines.
But you don't know.
I have no evidence that they're not on track for the schedule they announced. But I haven't been at the NRC since September 28th. So Mitch Davies would be able to speak to how are they progressing on that project.
Why was there such a delay between the original announced completion date for the NRC facility and the fact that it's still not completed?
You're referring to the manufacturing facility that we were just talking about?
Correct. And I know that there was also upgrades to other facilities as well too. It's just we don't have production capacity right now and we've spent a lot of money. So I'm just wondering if you could elucidate as to why that is.
The project that was announced to manufacture vaccines at the NRC was, at the time it was announced, planned to take 1 year. So it would be this summer would be when that project was completed. And to my knowledge, there's no delay, but Mitch Davies would have the more current information than I have.
Were there any delays that you were made aware of under your tenure?
For the manufacturing facility, there were no delays of which I'm aware for that manufacturing
And
facility.
the retrofit
We'll be
of the
leaving on September 28th.
And the retrofit of the other facility?
The retrofit of the other facility here, I'm not sure what you're referring to. Oh, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Well, thank you. So again, reminder, that means you have 30 seconds left. That one means you have your end of time.
Oh, sorry, I thought you were cutting me off. I'll gladly take another 30 seconds.
You do have 30 seconds, MP Rempel-Garner.
Thank you. Mr. Stewart, when you were president of the NRC, were diplomatic considerations an important component of the deal with China and the CanSino vaccine?
The NRC and CanSino had a research relationship that went back a few years, and it was part of ongoing work around developing different kinds of vaccines variants.
Was GAC ever involved in the consideration of the deal with CanSino and the NRC?
They would have been aware of what we were doing, but I don't know what you mean by
Thank
involved.
Thank you very much. And just to let the committee know that Mr. Mitch Davies will be presenting with Ministers Anand and Minister Champagne this Thursday. So if you have questions directly for them, they will be here on Thursday. With that, we now move to MP Johari. You have the floor for 6 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Welcome all the witnesses. Welcome, ministers. Good to have you in our committee. Minister, in your opening remarks, you talked about two general subjects, and you left one to the appropriate department and the minister. My understanding, you talked about the vaccine approval and about the vaccine distribution, and you shared with us around the amount that's been procured and around the timing that we're going to receive this. Let me start with the vaccine approval. Can you share with us more detail on what you call the rolling submission and what that has done in reducing the time of the approval? You're on mute, Minister.
You'd think I'd know by now. Thank you. Thank you so much, MP Johari, for the question and through the chair. Well, yes, I'll talk a little bit about that, and then I'll turn to Deputy Lucas, who is in charge at Health Canada of the regulatory team. Early on, we knew that there would be the need for speed to approve a whole host of medical supplies, including vaccines and therapeutics, and obviously devices, testing, components, etc. And so we were able to accelerate the capacity of the regulatory body in a few different ways. One, by ensuring that they had the financial and human resources to be able to greatly increase their capacity to review applications. So added people, added capacity. As Deputy Lucas will tell you, in terms of vaccine approvals, there are people working literally 24 hours a day, 7 days a week on teams assigned to vaccines so that they can do a very thorough review of the data and understand it as quickly as possible. I will also say the rolling regulatory approval for vaccines is very, very important, because typically a vaccine, in my understanding, from what I've learned in this portfolio, is that a vaccine development can take up to 10 years, from the concept to the actual approval, because, of course, of the need for submissions of data after every stage of the development, including a number of clinical trials to test whether it's effective and safe. A rolling approval allows for vaccine manufacturers, in this case, to be able to submit very quickly data as they acquire it, so that we're not having to review at the regulatory approval stage mountains of data, but rather at each stage being able to review the data as it comes in. And that allows for a very rapid back and forth as well between the manufacturers and Health Canada. If there's missing data, for example, if they need clarity, if they need data to be resubmitted, if there's gaps in the data, rather than the manufacturer having a significant lag time in some cases of being able to get that, they can respond very quickly. So I will turn, if with your permission, MP, to Deputy Lucas for a few more words on the process, if that's your wish.
Yeah, thank you. But now that we're going to Mr. Lucas, let me ask another question. I now understand the rolling submission and the close collaboration that the the our government health organization has with the manufacturer. Did we pursue similar working relationship with other jurisdiction, health organization? Some of them have approved some of these vaccines. Ahead of us. Is there any type of collaboration that's going between those health bodies and our health to be able to kind of piggyback on, to be able to get some of these vaccines like AstraZeneca, Janssen, and the other ones approved much faster?
Again, MP, I will start and turn to Deputy Lucas
Sure.
for a gap filling, if you will. But yes, there is collaboration with other regulatory bodies, and data and information and analysis is shared as appropriate. Of course, each country does its own approvals, and Canada is considered a gold standard regulator, which is also beneficial to the pharmaceutical companies, because of course, when you get approved in Canada, many other smaller countries that don't have the same level of capacity to do their own review are looking at Canada as a stamp of approval, if you will, that's quite valuable to the manufacturer as well. So we do collaborate on a regular basis with places like the EU, the FDA, and others that have long-standing relationships with Health Canada regulators. I'll turn to Deputy Lucas for a few more words.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, indeed. As part of our independent scientific review, we do and have continued to work with both international regulators and international regulatory forum. Canada played a critical role in the establishment of the International Coalition for Medical Regulatory Authorities and has played roles co-chairing committees pertinent to review of vaccines for COVID. We work through a consortium with Switzerland, the UK, Australia, and Singapore, as well as Minister Haidu noted, with the European Medicines Agency and with the US Food and Drug Administration. So through these efforts, we're able to identify opportunities to help strengthen our independent review. But at the end of the day, we make those decisions based on the evidence provided to us and on our benchmarks of safety, quality, and efficacy.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. We will now turn to Député Lemire. Vous avez la parole pour 6 minutes.
Merci, Madame.
Mr. Lemire, for 6 minutes. Thank you to Madam Minister and Mr. Stewart and Mr. Lucas. Is there an advantage for a country like Canada to be independent when it comes to producing vaccines in a pandemic context like we have now? Thank you for that question. I think yes.
We've seen the crisis has meant that there is an intense competition amongst countries for, in some cases, the exact same product, the exact same solution that has created, as you know, earlier in the day, for example, a high degree of tension around personal protective equipment around the country. And if you remember those early days, very few countries producing the kind of equipment that we needed. And I think we see the same in terms of, pharmaceuticals, et cetera. So I think clearly the world is learning this lesson, that there is obviously always going to be a global economy. But I think from my perspective as Minister of Health, the work that we're doing to build up our domestic manufacturing capacity is very important work, not just for COVID-19, but also for the future of our capacity to respond to other crises.
Merci.
Thank you. In the government strategy, I'm very pleased to see that we'll be investing more money and resources in producing vaccines in Canada, but Canada also secured 500% of its needs. What's going to happen with the doses that we don't need? Because that's 400 million doses. So 80 million, let's say, when you multiply by 2.
than we need. However, obviously, the first responsibility is to make sure that we can vaccinate Canadians, and we wanted to leave no stone unturned. I think one of the benefits of our approach has been to place bets, if you will, on a variety of leading and promising candidates as steered by the Vaccine Task Force. I've talked about this before in the House. These are exemplary Canadians, volunteers actually, that have expertise in pharmaceuticals and immunology and other relevant fields to advise Canada about which candidates that were under development that looked promising and how we should place our bets. And in fact, that's exactly what we've done. As you know, we're also a contributor to COVAX, the facility that's looking at making sure that the world can be vaccinated. And there is an opportunity, should Canada find itself not needing additional doses, to be able to contribute even more greatly to COVAX, either through options or other mechanisms. I will agree with you.
Est-ce qu'il y a un coût, Madame la Ministre?
Is there a cost to reserve doses from pharmaceutical companies?
On doses for manufacturing companies, from manufacturing companies. And again, these options have been purchased on behalf of Canada to make sure we have a diverse portfolio with the best possibility of having successful vaccines here in Canada.
Donc, acheter 400 millions de
So buying 400 million doses has a cost. In a technical briefing, you mentioned that each dose is $19.50. Is that price the same if you paid in the last quarter of 2020? Is it the same price that we'll be having in the third quarter of 2021, for instance?
Those are questions that will need to be raised with my colleague, Minister Anand. I am not in the work of procurement in terms of negotiating contracts with the pharmaceutical companies. Rather, I work on the side of making sure that we implement the Vaccine Task Force recommendations and that we have the capacity to distribute the vaccines and support the provinces and territories to do so.
Je vais leur poser donc la
All right, so I'll ask him the question a little later on. In the government strategy, why have preferred Chinese production or Canada or Europe before looking to companies in Quebec or Canada?
About which candidates we should place our bets on was guided by the advice of the experts on the Vaccine Task Force. They do include actually a Canadian company, partly because the Canadian company had promised, but also because, to your point, having a biomanufacturing capacity in Canada is important, and this is a way that we can support that development, and that is the Medicago company based in Montreal. Again, 76 million doses, an option on 76 million doses on that candidate.
Est-ce que l'entente avec Pfizer
Does the Pfizer agreement come with an obligation to use their vaccine, or does Medicago, if it's authorized, will they be able to just distribute their own vaccine in Canada?
I'm not aware of the procurement details and the contracts with the companies. Those will be good questions for my colleague, Minister Anand. I will just say that from our perspective at the Public Health Agency of Canada, each vaccine is assessed on its merits. Each vaccine may be indicated for use in different populations, and all might be useful for the variety of Canadian citizens and their needs.
Thank you very much. Our next round of questions goes to MP Davies. You have the floor for 6 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My first question will be to Mr. Stewart. Mr. Stewart, PHAC had somehow inexplicably reduced or eliminated the Global Public Health Intelligence Network. Can you tell me if GFIN is back in operation now?
Yes, GFIN is back in operation, and Minister Haidu has asked for a review of the events you're referring to.
That is the events leading to why it was surprisingly canceled?
Looking into the operation of the program over the past while and opportunities to enhance its effectiveness.
Do we know who made the decision to reduce or cancel GFIN?
I believe it's a public record. It was a decision made administratively inside the organization.
Is there a
to change
person?
the way.
Is there a person who made that decision?
Well, I think that it's already been discussed. I think this is not a new topic. This has been well considered previously.
I'm just asking who that person is. It's a pretty straightforward question, Mr. Stewart. Who is the person who decided that?
Well, I think the review will give us the insights you're looking for.
Fair enough. Mr. Stewart, you have said that you're confident that Pfizer will deliver its 4 million doses by the end of March. Is that based on 5 or 6 doses per vial?
At present, the regulated use of the product is 5 doses, and I believe Pfizer has made a submission, but that's not my area of responsibility. Deputy Minister Lucas is the regulator.
Right, but if you're confident that we're going to have 4 million doses, then surely you understand the math on that. It makes a big difference if we're getting 5 doses or 6 doses per vial, if we're going to confidently say we have 4 million doses coming.
Sir, the contract is based on the number of doses, and so we will receive the number of doses we contracted for.
Well, that's a matter of logic. Let's hope so. Mr. Stewart, you referred to procurement schedules in terms of meeting that promised number of doses. Will you release those procurement schedules to the Canadian public?
Procurement is managed by a different department, by PSPC, and so I believe Minister Anand and her colleagues will be coming before you, and that would be an appropriate question for them.
Okay. Now, on August 31st, 2020, the Prime Minister's office itself issued a press release promising, quote, production of 250,000 doses of vaccine per month starting in November 2020 at the National Research Council's facility in Montreal, and up to 2 million doses per month by next year, that is by 2021. However, on November 24th, 2020, Prime Minister Trudeau claimed that COVID-19 vaccine access for Canadians would be delayed because, quote, Canada no longer has any domestic production capacity for vaccines, end quote. Finally, on November 26th, the NRC released a statement claiming their facility will not be ready until mid-2021 because the NRC realized in the fall that the space allocated, quote, would not meet good manufacturing practice requirements, end quote. Mr. Stewart, was the Prime Minister misleading Canadians when on August 31 he promised us that we would have 250,000 doses of vaccine per month starting in November 2020? And if not, can you explain that discrepancy?
So the events that you're referring to happened after I left the organization. From the sounds of it, you're combining 2 projects, and it would be Mitch Davies who'd be better able to explain the responses to what you're asking after. My understanding is that the manufacturing facility is on track and will be delivering on the timetable that was announced, but I'm not current anymore with that project.
Okay. Ms. Haidu, maybe to you, can you explain that discrepancy to us? How could the Prime Minister promise Canadians 250,000 doses of vaccine starting in November out of the NRC facility, and then we find out the NRC facility is not even ready to produce any vaccines in any project by mid-2021? Can you explain that to me?
I think that is a question that's best for left for my colleague, Minister Champagne. As I mentioned earlier, that isn't a file that I've been involved in.
Okay. Ms. Heidi, you do sit around the cabinet table. Maybe you can answer this. Prime Minister Trudeau told Canadians that Canada would be unaffected by EU export controls, but we are not on the EU's exemption list for export controls. Can you explain that discrepancy and maybe explain why Canada failed to secure an exemption from EU export controls?
I think my colleague, Minister Ng, has spoken to this in the media and in the House. In fact, she has had very good conversations with her counterparts, and the EU has assured us that their intent is not to stop shipments to Canada. I also spoke with my counterpart, the Minister of Health, for the EU on the weekend, and she also assured me of that. So again, this is a question that would be in detail better posed to my colleague.
Okay. Perhaps I can get one more question, maybe Mr. Stewart, to something that's in your area. You publicly stated it was unacceptable that one of your agency's managers ignored your own advice and took a free vacation in Jamaica paid for by an airline. That was Dominique Baker. She inexplicably is the manager of Border and Travel Health, which is a program tasked with keeping communicable diseases out of Canada. She violated the advice of PHAC. Can you
MP
tell us, is
Davies?
she still working at PHAC?
MP Davies, you're actually out of time, but I'll allow Mr. Stewart to answer that.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, so the question is what though? You weren't finished. Sorry.
You're on mute, Mr. Davies.
Is she still working at PHAC?
Oh, so first of all, I characterized her behavior, I think, in the media as being unacceptable. It is unacceptable, and that is a matter that's being investigated. And of course, because it's now a matter of personal privacy for an individual person, I think the investigation should be undertaken without discussing it further, sir.
Thank you very much. We will now start our next round of questions. Our first round of questions goes to MP Cumming. You have the floor for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I'll direct my questions toward Mr. Stewart. Mr. Stewart, I want to go back to your time at NRC, and you were dealing with, under the CanSino agreement, an agreement with a Chinese entity that has a proven track record, or China certainly has a proven track record of violation of intellectual property rights. You sent the proprietary cell line for developing vaccines to CanSino. When you did that, were there any red flags? Did it raise any concerns that the entity you're dealing with, this could have been a problem?
So a couple things. CanSino is a private company. It's publicly traded on the Hong Kong stock market, if I remember. What we transferred to them, sir, was a cell line, which is a basic platform. It's actually their intellectual property in the vaccine, not ours. And so in that instance, our cell line was something that we have commercialized with many different people. And we didn't have any concerns about the intellectual property because it's a thing, it's a physical thing, the cell line. The intellectual property risk, if there had been any, would have been around who owns the vaccine IP. And in this instance, it was actually their IP, not ours.
But there are further developments where even CSIS officials had said that the NRC should have seen red flags around this CanSino partnership. Did this not raise any concerns to you in dealing with CanSino?
I don't know which CSIS officials you're referring to, sir. We had no discussions with CSIS that raised red flags. I have no knowledge of that discussion.
So when did you realize the CanSino deal was falling apart? What was the date that you realized that it was falling apart?
There was no one date. They were lined up to start clinical trials, and they did not ship. It did not clear customs. And so it just, with time, became apparent that it was not going to be released. And you'll remember, perhaps in the media, I noted at that time that obviously the transaction was not proceeding.
So when did you make the government aware? When was the earliest date that you made the government aware?
To be honest, I don't remember. We can certainly double check and provide that detail.
Because this is critical, that it appears from what's being reported that when the announcement was made in May, and then the shipment of the seeds was held back, that it delayed further discussions, and when it was finally canceled, was there a delay in looking at other opportunities because of the efforts that was put into this CanSino deal?
This story has been circulated in the media a few times. There's no connection whatsoever between the CanSino deal and the procurement negotiations that Minister Anand's team were doing. I don't know where that comes from, to be honest. CanSino was just a research relationship with a company at that juncture. It did not defer or was not connected to any of the other activity underway.
At your time at NRC, so the Royal Mount facility, which had an expansion, which looks like we may see some kind of production out of it sometime this year with any hope. It's been reported that the UK took a different strategy. They recognized in May early on about the importance of manufacturing, and they looked at repurposing of facilities. Did the NRC actually look at potential repurposing, other arrangements with other potential organizations that could have produced vaccines?
That's a large question, sir. So I would say what the United Kingdom's doing and what the NRC is doing is actually the same thing. And there was extensive discussions back and forth between the United Kingdom team and the NRC team. It's the same general idea, a nonprofit entity to manufacture vaccines.
But Mr. Stewart,
Mr.
Stewart, the difference is that the UK was by May to this fall be able to build production capacity, manufacturing capacity. And in Canada, we are at best sometime this year, and the latest reports may even be by the end of the year. Is that not concerning?
Well, the NRC project, as I mentioned earlier, to my knowledge, sir, is on track and is actually on schedule for what was intended when it was announced. And Mitch Davies and his minister will be available to this committee to reassure you or speak to the issue you're raising. If you have concerns it's not on track, Mitch would be better positioned than I am to speak to that because I haven't been there since September.
Thank you so much. Our next round of questions goes to MP Lambropoulos. You have the floor for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I'd like to thank all of our witnesses for being here today to answer our questions. My first question will go to Minister Hajdu, and if anyone wants to chime in as well, you're more than welcome to. So the Premier of Quebec has announced several times and has made it clear that he believes that giving one vaccine to Canadians is better than giving some people 2 vaccines or 2 doses of the vaccine. And this is very, very concerning to many people because they don't necessarily think it'll work or have the same effectiveness if the rules that Pfizer has given on the time between vaccines is not followed. What role do we have to play in this? And is there any way that we can strongly encourage the Premier of Quebec to follow the instructions given by Pfizer with regards to 45 days between doses rather than 90 days or a longer amount of time?
Thank you very much, MP Lambropoulos. And I'll just start, but maybe turn to Ian Stewart or Steve Lucas because it has an intersection with the Public Health Agency and with Deputy Lucas from a regulatory approval process. Obviously, the closer that we can adhere to the recommendations of the manufacturer, the better in terms of our perspective. In fact, the vaccine was approved with adherence to the manufacturer's recommendation, and it was further reviewed by NACI and then through Dr. Tam's Special Advisory Committee to extend to 6 weeks as being the maximum gap between the first and second dose. We understand that there are strong desires to vaccinate people as quickly as possible, but we also obviously want to make sure that the vaccine is as effective as possible for the individuals that we're using it for. So I'll turn to perhaps Deputy Lucas to start.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As Minister Hajdu noted, the regulatory review based on clinical evidence provided by Pfizer, or in the case of Moderna, indicated that the dose interval should be 21 days in the context of Pfizer authorization and 28 days in the case of Moderna. This regulatory authorization was then considered looking at the broader benefits and risks and the clinical evidence by the National Advisory Committee on Immunization in terms of the clinical guidance they provided, which Ian Stewart can speak to in the context of the Public Health Agency, given their direct relationship with the National Advisory Committee on Immunization.
Well, just to close that off, the National Advisory Committee on Immunization has looked at this issue. It's an arm's length independent body of experts. They looked at the clinical trial data, they looked at the regulatory approval, and they provided the advice that with 45 days was appropriate interval. And so far, my understanding is that provinces are working within that guidance.
Thank you very much. And Minister Haidu, I guess my next question goes to you as well. Currently, Canadians, we've procured Moderna and Pfizer vaccines, and we've said that the next two that will soon or possibly be approved, and that will possibly have access to, are AstraZeneca and Johnson Johnson. With the ones that we currently have, we will be vaccinating all Canadians by September at the latest. That's the promise that's been made up until now. I'm wondering what we think, how, I guess I'm looking for a best case scenario. If these two other vaccines were to be approved and down the line other ones, what is the quickest that we can get Canadians vaccinated? And I guess I'm asking this because we don't know necessarily how long immunity lasts once someone has been given both doses. We know that it is effective for a certain amount of time. We don't know how long that lasts, and the quicker more Canadians get vaccinated, the better it'll be for Canada in the long run. So I'm just wondering what a best case scenario would look like.
Well, thank you very much. And through the chair, the member is absolutely right. There's still so many unanswered questions around the immunity piece, how long it lasts, and obviously whether or not it prevents onward transmission are two of the questions that researchers are right now trying to unlock the answers for. We do know, though, that it reduces severe disease and it protects people from dying from COVID-19, which is why the NACI recommendations suggested that we prioritize elderly people. I see the chair's card is waving at me too, so I'll have to stop there. I'm sorry.
Thank you very much, Minister. We will now go to Député Lemire. Vous avez 2 minutes et demie.
Merci, Madame la Présidente.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Minister, can you confirm that the information that was given more than once last week during the emergency debate, that the plan is very clear, 6 million doses of Pfizer and Moderna vaccine until March, 20 million until June, and 80 million until September. So this is the government's strategy to concentrate only on these two companies.
Chair, I'll clarify, that is not the government's strategy to focus only on those two companies. There's certainly two very promising companies, and that the first two that have been approved. The member's right, even if we were to approve no other companies, we would still have enough with those two companies to vaccinate every Canadian according to our current contracts. But we're not stopping with just two. Of course, we have, as the member previously just said, AstraZeneca, Johnson & Johnson are in the queue to be approved, and recently Novavax as well has filed for regulatory approval through our rolling approval process. And this is good news for Canadians because the variety is not just important in terms of the number of doses. In some cases, vaccines are more effective with one population over another. Vaccine manufacturers may have done research in, for example, younger populations, while others might not have. And so this variety is important for Canada to reach its immunization goals and to provide that option to provinces and territories as well.
Concretely, why is Canada's strategy based on the buying of doses and not the buying of a license that would allow us to produce vaccines here?
I can't answer that question for you. That is a question that might be more appropriately asked to Minister Champagne. But we, listen, the Vaccine Task Force was charged with the chore of looking at all of these promising vaccine developments around the world and advising the government about where to place our bets so that we would have as much variety as possible, given that we knew not all candidates would be successful and not all companies would be able to scale up to deliver vast numbers of doses around the world.
Merci.
Thank you.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much.
Please, you have the floor for 2.5 minutes.
Thank you. Minister, when we talk about vaccinating all Canadians by September, do you mean that all Canadians will get 1 or 2 doses of the Moderna and Pfizer vaccine by that time?
Thank you, and through the chair, the concept is that all Canadians who want to be vaccinated will have an opportunity to do so by the end of September. Some vaccines don't require 2 doses, and so some people may be vaccinated with, for example, Johnson & Johnson that does not require 2 doses. Others may be vaccinated with 2 doses. The regime should be followed, dependent on the kind of vaccine that the person is receiving.
Okay. Now, you talk about securing as much variety as possible, but I want to zero in on variety of production. And of course, AstraZeneca has been mentioned, and domestic production is in the news today. Well, we know that AstraZeneca pledged to provide its vaccine on a not-for-profit basis for the duration of the pandemic and was open to manufacturing partnerships in fact, Australia, Brazil, Mexico, Argentina, India, Japan, South Korea, and China, and other countries. All negotiated licensing agreements to manufacture the AstraZeneca vaccine domestically and are doing so today. Can you tell us why Canada failed to secure this similar licensing agreement to manufacture the AstraZeneca vaccine in Canada?
Thank you. Through the chair, I can't speak to the negotiations that the procurement team and that Minister Champagne's team have
Fair
proceeded
enough.
with.
Okay. My last question is to Mr. Stewart. Mr. Stewart, there was, I think, I think it's fair to call it a scathing report called Lessons Learned from the Public Health Agency of Canada, and it was a comprehensive audit. And frankly, it revealed serious gaps in capacity at PHAC, including a lack of senior medical expertise needed to support Dr. Tam. They said it was slow to be put in place and most likely is still insufficient to provide the support required. There were gaps in critical skills, limited capacity, a lack of emergency response management expertise. It went on and on. So I'm going to break that down a bit. One of my biggest concerns was the finding that Dr. Tam often received information in the wrong format with inaccuracies. Now, for a government that wants to make decisions based on science, of course, we can't base science based on incorrect information. Is that still a problem at PHAC, or has it been fixed?
Very quickly, you're out of time.
Okay, it was a lessons learned report that management asked for in order to learn from what was happening. And one of the problems identified, as you say, was the support for Dr. Tam. We have, in fact, augmented the support for Dr. Tam. We've also hired more doctors, more nurses, and more epidemiologists in order to surround better support of the nature you're referring to.
Thank you very much. Notre prochain tour, c'est député généreux. Vous avez la parole.
Next question goes to Member Généreux. You have the floor for 5 minutes. You are on mute. Monsieur Généreux?
I'm just going to check with the clerk. Was there a change in the speaking order? The next round is for the Conservative Party. Anyone? Okay, so what I'll do is I'll go to MP Assassi and then we'll flip back to the Conservatives. If you could let me know who will be next on the rotation.
MP Drishan just raised his hand.
Okay, MP Drishan, please go ahead. You have the floor for 5 minutes.
Well, thank you very much. Just a couple of things. Certainly the Prime Minister's been telling Canadians that we're doing fine when it comes to fighting this pandemic and distributing vaccines. But of course, some of the statistics don't particularly bear that out. Canada is now ranked 61st out of 98 countries in the performance in fighting COVID, according to a think tank from Australia. In addition, according to data collected by the University of Oxford, based Our World in Data, Canada now ranks 20th globally in terms of vaccines distributed per capita, and we are behind many, many countries that that can have been doing a much better job. And of course, there are reports today that the PM is refusing to show Parliament the terms of any of the contracts for the vaccines that have been acquired. I'm just wondering, as the Minister of Health, can you assure us that this lack of transparency is only short-term so that Canadians can have the transparency that this Prime Minister has always promised?
Well, thank you, MP Drushin, through the chair. I'll just speak first of all to the transparency that we have shown Canadians, and I invite Canadians to visit canada.ca/coronavirus, where they can follow along with a number of details of data on the transmission, on cases, on equipment that has been shipped to provinces and territories, on the vaccination process, on the vaccinations distributed to provinces and territories, and those that have been delivered by provinces and territories. We have been sharing data as quickly as we can get it. Obviously, this is a shared jurisdiction, so sometimes data is not as forthcoming as we'd like, but certainly.
Thank you very much. That's great to hear that you're talking about the shared jurisdiction. Of course, the provinces are the ones that have been, all of this has been put on their plate in order to do distribution. And of course, they have done their job. They have to save back a few vaccines for the second doses. And of course, they are the ones that are saying that your government is not giving vaccines out in a timely way. And so things that are, if you can talk about, there's going to be so many millions of doses by the end of the third quarter. Right now we're in the first quarter. Now we're in the middle of this. This is the time when people need to have these vaccines. So I don't think people are quite as confident as you're suggesting. Yes, there's probably a website, but again, it's giving assurances from this prime minister who has proven not to be overly trustworthy in that. So I'm just wondering, and again, today you're saying, well, we'll talk to another minister. Do the ministers ever talk to each other? Because the answers that we're getting today is like an episode of Question Period. We're not getting any answers. What can we say when this, can you tell this committee, what does he mean when he says that Canada is doing fine?
Madame la Présidente, je ne voulais pas arrêter le député de
Madam Chair, I don't want to interrupt Member Drushin, but there was no interpretation during his speech.
To translation. Monsieur Lemire, is it working now? Mr. Drushin, can I ask if you could possibly get the microphone between your lip and your nose? Maybe that'll help the translators be able to pick it up. Thank you. Please go ahead.
I asked if the minister is aware of the fact that these assurances from the Prime Minister have not proven to be overly trustworthy. Again, we had 2 months of prorogation. We asked for the minister back in December. It seems now that when the minister is here, that we start to hear announcements from this prime minister about what they're planning to do. This is the delay, and this is the frustration that people have. And the point that I was trying to make is we can continue to say there are millions of doses that will be ready at the end of the quarter. Right now, it's the middle of the quarter, and we aren't getting any. So I'm just wondering what the plan is as far as this minister is concerned, and does she talk to the other ministers so that we all understand what's taking place?
Oh, well, thank you through the chair. In fact, we've been there for provinces and territories since the beginning, providing billions of dollars to provinces and territories, paying for all of the equipment, personal protective equipment, testing equipment, paying for all of the vaccines, distributing the vaccines, and setting up provinces and territories so they could receive those vaccines. And
excuse me, who is distributing the vaccines?
In fact,
was it not the provinces that are delivering the vaccines?
Mr. Drushin, can you please let the minister finish for the sake of interpretation, please? Thank you.
The National Operations Center, run by the Public Health Agency of Canada, delivers vaccines to provinces and territories, and in particular with the Pfizer vaccine, was very involved in ensuring that the provinces and territories had the distribution sites ready to receive those vaccines. Deliveries continue week over week, and we are in clear communication with provinces and territories so they know what to expect and can plan accordingly.
Great, thank you. And I believe it is the provinces that have been doing the job. They're the ones waiting for the rest of these vaccines to be given. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I understand there was a fire alarm at 151 Spark, so there might have been what caused the little problem with the with MP Genereux's microphone. So we'll be able to get to him in the next round. Our apologies for that. We'll now go to MP Assassi. You have the floor for 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and thank you very much, Minister, for appearing before our committee. Now, Minister, it seems to me, looking at all of the activity that's been going on, that the approach of our government has been a whole of government approach. And it's essentially consisted of 3 different prongs, each of which we have pursued independently. Number 1, we've tried to secure access to leading international vaccines. Number 2, invest in the most promising Canadian vaccines and therapies. And number 3, make strategic investments to rebuild Canada's domestic capacity. Would that be a fair assessment? I appreciate that you're responsible for various aspects of this, but would that be a good way of summarizing our government's approach?
I think that would be MP El-Hassi.
Thank you. Now, you noted in your remarks on several different occasions that we are guided by the vaccine task force and that we were intent on making sure that we had access to the best international vaccines, and that essentially it constituted a process of placing our bets on various developments that were ongoing around the world. How would you assess that in hindsight, having looked at it? Would you say that it's been an effective strategy?
Thank you, MP Hassi, and through the chair, yes, I think that using expertise in Canada from a variety of different perspectives in the field of vaccination has been very effective. If you think about the fact that we have 2 approved vaccines, 3 more in the queue for approval, and some very promising developments from the Canadian vaccine, Medicago, I think that we should be very grateful to these Canadians who, by the way, did this on a voluntary basis, besides their extremely busy jobs in some cases that they were holding down, also responding to COVID-19 in their own realms. And so this use of expertise has really stood Canada well in terms of our capacity to ensure that we are in fact buying the right vaccines, and as you said and I've said, placing our bets on the right candidate.
Thank you very much for that. Couldn't agree with you more. Now, you noted that as of April, there's going to be more volumes of vaccines coming in, that it will accelerate in terms of what we receive. From where you sit, would you say that the provinces are in a good position to have the ability and the logistics to actually deal with the heightened volume of doses coming in?
Yes, through the chair, I would say that an enormous amount of work has happened at all levels of government to prepare for the next stage of vaccination, which is really, as you point out, one that will be primarily focusing on volume. We knew early on, we knew in the first quarter that we would not have a volume of vaccines, but we also felt that it was a good way to ramp up our vaccination process because it would allow for the provinces and territories to have in place the infrastructure, particularly for these new vaccines that require extremely cold storage. When we start to receive vaccines that are more, I suppose, traditional in that they don't require the same storage considerations, they can be moved more easily. In some cases, they're 1-dose vaccines. Provinces and territories have a lot of experience in that type of vaccination. Obviously, there are a number of different stakeholders who are excited to help, and that work is happening with the National Operations Center to ensure that provinces and territories have the robust planning in place. And of course, we're there to assist them with any of the needs that they might have as they do that planning.
Thank you very much. Now, if I could turn to Mr. Stewart. Mr. Stewart, I have to say I'm quite surprised that you've been barraged with a number of questions that really don't relate to PHAC and instead relate to NRC. Could you, for the benefit of the members of our committee, explain the differences and the responsibilities of PHAC and the NRC, please?
Of course, the National Research Council is over 100 years old. It's a 15 research center institution that does research with a lot of partners, about 800 different partners a year. Any given year, they've got many, many projects with all kinds of companies from all across aerospace, life sciences, agriculture, you name it. And of course, the Public Health Agency is focused on ensuring the public health of Canadians, whether it's funding programs to support things like addressing early childhood development or opioids crisis, or on the other hand, today very evidently preparing for an immunization program and responding to the pandemic. I'm being red flagged, so I'll stop there.
My apologies,
Thank
you're
you.
out of time. Notre prochain tour, c'est député.
Our next round is MP Généreux. You have 5 minutes. Thanks you very much. I'll go very quickly. So we barely had any answers, so Mr. Champagne better be ready. Madam Minister, on this wonderful portfolio that you've announced since last month in terms of vaccines and to secure that around the world, so there are some 5 out of 7 that won't be available before the summer, like Novavax. And that will be announced by the PM this afternoon. So that would be 2 million doses per month. So the two main suppliers have not supplied what they should have supplied. And they haven't done those since the beginning of the year. What assurance that you have, apart from a verbal assurance, not a written one, that the vaccines will be delivered in the next months?
Thank you, MP Généreux, and through the chair. Those questions around the contracts and delivery schedules really are best posed to my colleague, Minister Anand.
C'est ça que je disais, on va avoir un gros jeudi parce que vous avez peut-être pas.
Yeah, well, it's going to be a very big, a very busy day on Thursday. You're on a very special committee that is there to manage so we can secure vaccines, and you can't even answer us because there's 5 of the 7 vaccines that we won't get until the summer. So what assurances do you have, or what can you give us, that in the following weeks that we will receive the vaccines that were promised to us and that unfortunately have not been delivered since the beginning of the year, as promised?
Well, thank you for the question. And through the chair, I'll just say that I work very closely with the Minister of Procurement. She is working flat out to ensure that we have clarity of delivery schedules so that we can ensure the provinces and territories know what doses they're going to get and when they will get them, and that they can be ready to deploy those vaccines when they enter the country. Of course, some of these vaccines require an extreme cold chain, as we know, and so it's very important that we coordinate the receipt of the vaccines and then the further delivery to the provinces and territories. That work is happening with Major General Danny Fortin through the National Operations Center, and obviously in great deal of participation with procurement, and we're very pleased that he's there to help ensure that the transfer to the provinces and territories is going as smoothly as it is.
Madame la ministre, le gouvernement du Québec, en raison.
Madam, we've had to postpone the second dose of Moderna and Pfizer, and that is not authorized really by the companies, and it could lead to a mutation of the virus, as we've seen in South Africa and Brazil. Does that worry you as health minister?
Thank you. And through the chair, as I've responded already to that question, there is guidance from the Public Health Agency of Canada, as well as regulatory approval guidance that indicates that provinces should be vaccinating as close as possible to the pharmaceutical recommendations.
La compagnie Moderna, pas Moderna, par le médicament.
Medicago received $175 million from the federal government to develop a vaccine. Do you know if that vaccine is effective and when we will get the first deliveries of Medicago?
I will answer broadly and turn to my officials, but in general, my understanding is they are proceeding very well through their clinical trials, and it is quite promising. I will turn to Steve Lucas to see if there is any update from his conversations with the corporation.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Health Canada has authorized 2 clinical trials for Medicago, and they're currently doing a phase 2/3 trial that was authorized in early November, and we'll be awaiting their results. And when they're ready, a rolling submission to our expedited pathway that Minister Hajdu has described.
Mais à quel moment on peut croire?
But when can we expect to have that vaccine for Canadians?
The completion of the clinical program and manufacturing work of Medicago and their submission to the regulatory authority at Health Canada.
OK. Monsieur Stewart, vous avez.
Mr. Stewart, since the 20th of September, you've been in a different department, but your prior department, you were the heart of the deal with CanSino. Do you think that CanSino, do you believe that Chinese companies, that even if they're public companies, are only private?
I may not have fully got the questions. Are private companies fully private in China, or I'm not quite clear?
Yeah, that's what
Perhaps
I
you
was
can,
asking.
perhaps on another subsequent round, you can continue on that subject. Our next round of questions goes to MP Erskine Smith. You have the floor for 5 minutes.
Thanks very much, Madam Chair. My first question is in relation to the approval process for vaccines. Obviously, without domestic manufacturing capacity, we rely upon imports, and so it is out of necessity really important to approve these vaccines as quickly as possible. Now, a constituent of mine, Dr. Doan, reached out to say, why has there been a delay in approving AstraZeneca? And when we look at the EU and Australia and the UK, why in a crisis situation like this, a global pandemic, would we not rely upon not a single international regulator, but where there are a collection of trusted regulators, 3 that I've referenced, why would we not expedite the approval on that basis of these critical vaccines?
Maybe I can start and turn to Deputy Lucas. Thanks very much, MP Erskine Smith and Madam Chair. Quite frankly, the answer is that we're not comparing apples to oranges in many cases. So, for example, AstraZeneca can be produced in multiple sites across the world. And when Health Canada does an approval, it's looking at not just the efficacy of the vaccine, the safety of the vaccine itself, but also the manufacturing data that goes along with where the doses destined for Canada will be produced, along with even data on the individual lots that Canada is purchasing. So it seems like we're all approving the same vaccine, but in fact, a vaccine produced in India versus a vaccine produced in the UK versus a vaccine produced in the US may all have different manufacturing data that needs to be analyzed and analyzed through the lens of safety. And I will turn to Deputy Lucas to fill in a few more details.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As Minister Hajdu noted, we do work in the rolling submission basis through data from preclinical to clinical to quality data or data pertaining to manufacturing, and as well issue drug establishment licenses for those establishments that would be producing the actual vaccines that Canada would access. So that process is happening on an extraordinarily expedited basis. As noted previously, we do work in collaboration with international regulators, as noted. But in the end, we need to review the final data that's pertinent to the authorization in Canada and make that assessment based on our independent scientific review. We're doing that literally working around the clock with independent teams dedicated to each vaccine. And we'll work to conclude that review, in particular AstraZeneca, as quickly as possible with the final information provided by the manufacturer when it comes.
And do you have a sense, Mr. Lucas, of when that will be?
As noted, it's dependent on the final information coming from the manufacturer. But
what's the earliest that we might see it?
I'm not going to speculate on a specific date. We have noted it's in the very short term, but it is dependent on, as noted, the final information from the manufacturer and the review of that information.
And we have enough vaccine doses through Pfizer and Moderna to ensure, as you've said, every Canadian who wants one will have an opportunity to be vaccinated by the end of September. So when AstraZeneca is approved, how does that change the timeline? To stay with Mr. Lucas.
The as noted, that the vaccines will have different efficacy and population targeting. The National Advisory Committee on Immunization will provide advice. The assessment on having an ability to provide vaccinations to all Canadians who want by the end of September was in recognition of approved vaccines and recognizing other ones in the pipeline. So I'm not going to speculate on the specific timeline. The intent is with approved vaccines and deliveries to immunize Canadians as quickly as possible.
Okay, so but I can glean, I think, that it will be faster than the end of September, but you're not going to give me a specific date as far as it goes. When it comes to, I guess I'll close with this, just in terms of, we see 20,000 dead as of yesterday here in Canada. We have a vaccine rollout that is obviously underway, but we're many months away from the end to this crisis. We've got new travel restrictions that are now in place. From the Public Health Agency of Canada's perspective, when it comes to contact tracing, rapid testing, when it comes to paid sick leave, what advice would you give to either the federal government or provincial governments to continue to save lives until we get to the end of this with vaccines?
Maybe I can start, and I'm not sure if Dr. Tam is on the line. I'm not sure. Maybe Madam Chair, I'm not sure if she's on the list of deputants. But I will start, and I think it's an important question. I think the reality is that vaccines are a very important tool, but that is what they are. They're a tool, and we have other tools as well that we will need to continue to keep applying. No one really knows the end game here with COVID-19, but we do know that that we're going to have to continue to protect each other while we undergo vaccination, while we understand the role of vaccination on onward transmission, and while we develop better therapeutics to manage COVID-19. There are some scientists that wonder if COVID-19 might not become like an annual flu, which we will have to combat in very specific ways. All of that research is critically important, and why we've invested in the Canadian Institute for Health Research in such phenomenal ways to ensure our full research community here in Canada is looking at all of those aspects of managing COVID-19.
Thank you, Minister. My apologies. I was trying to get your attention with the red flag. So we will now go to Député Lemire. Vous avez 2 minutes et demie.
Merci, Madame la Présidente.
Thank you, Madam Chair and Madam Minister. Since we're on a global alert for the variants of COVID, if there is a mutation, could today's vaccines not be effective? And do your agreements adapt to a new one, or would we have paid for vaccines for nothing?
Turn to my officials. So far, that is why we're watching so closely the variants of concern. Obviously, there's research worldwide to understand their impact on vaccination. There's some limited research that some of the variants may have an impact on vaccine effectiveness, but none that completely negate vaccine effectiveness. That is the research that's underway right now worldwide. And in fact, manufacturers have been very clear that in some cases they can adjust the formula, so to speak, to address the rise of new variants and ensure that their vaccine remains effective against new variants of the disease. I'll turn to Dr. Lucas, who may know more from a regulatory perspective.
Thank you, Minister Hajdu. Madam Chair, we do work continuously with the manufacturers, including of approved vaccines. And indeed, as the variants emerged, followed up with Pfizer and Moderna, as did regulators around the world who'd approved those vaccines, to have them assess them relative to these variants of biological concern. And that work continues, and they will be continuing to assess those and make adjustments if needed.
Donc, je comprends que les ententes.
So the agreements will still be valid, and if ever the entire strategy has to be redone, would you consider the powers of pharmaceutical companies in Canada and Quebec so that we can bruise these things locally?
Thank you. And through the chair, that's exactly why our strategy includes a Canadian company. And as the announcement from the Prime Minister today indicates, Canada has been proceeding towards biomanufacturing capacity since the outbreak. Obviously, this is important for our health security.
Merci beaucoup.
Merci beaucoup.
Our next round of questions goes to MP Davies. You have the floor for 2.5 minutes.
Thank you, Minister. I think it's well known now that your government has refused to release a single word of a single contract that you signed with vaccine manufacturers when jurisdictions such as the United States, Brazil, and the European Union have made much of that information public. So other countries are disclosing details of the contracts they signed. Your government famously said it would be transparent by default. Principles of crisis management demand straightforward communication. You claim that you've secured the doses in presumably ironclad contracts and that they're done. It leads to questions, Minister, that there must be something in these contracts you don't want Canadians or the opposition to see when you hide them. Why won't you disclose at least basic information of these contracts if they're so solid and back up the supply plans that you've announced?
Oh, thank you. Through the chair, I think making an assumption that the contracts are hiding things that we don't want Canadians to see is a bit of a leap, but I think that question is best posed to my colleague, Minister Anand, who's the Minister of Procurement and manages the contract.
Thank you. Now, the B1.117 and B1.351 variants remind us now that gatherings of any size are dangerous and travel should not be happening at all. In a federally regulated sector, the airline industry, your government allowed airlines to advertise vacations to sunspots to Canadians in December at a time when you were advising Canadians not to do non-essential travel. Was that an error?
Madam Chair, I think the message from our government has been clear from the beginning to avoid non-essential travel, to stay home, not only for the risk of contracting the virus or potentially bringing it back to Canada, but because the travel environment is incredibly fragile right now as we see countries take changes in their entry and exit requirements very rapidly.
Well, I agree, Minister, but that's why I think it's kind of hard to understand how your government, which is responsible for regulating the airline industry, allowed them to market to Canadians vacation travel at a time when you're telling Canadians not. Is that not a contradiction in federal policy?
Madam Chair, I myself, the Prime Minister, every Minister of the Crown, and Dr. Tam, along with many other officials, have advised Canadians to avoid non-essential travel for a very long time.
Thank you very much. Our next round of questions goes to MP Cumming. You have the floor for 5 minutes.
Thank you. Thank you through the chair and Minister Hajdu. You had talked about that you believe the provinces are ready for the additional doses of vaccines, that the volume that will be coming. Is it clear to the provinces when the volume's coming and what amounts, by when, by what date? Because it looks to me that the distribution of vaccines, without knowing what you're dealing with, to ramp up properly, they need to know what the supply looks like. So is it clear to the provinces when they will receive doses from who and by what date?
As soon as we have information from the pharmaceutical companies about what dose shipments look like, we share that with the provinces and territories. The National Operations Center, as you know, run by General Danny Fortin, works very closely with provinces and territories to assess their plans, to identify gaps, to help fill those gaps when the provinces and territories need that assistance. This is a very collaborative approach, and as you know, we've been sharing information as quickly as we're getting it from the companies.
Can you not see how this creates some difficulty? So, for example, in Alberta, they had scheduled out vaccines, including for caregivers, and I have personal knowledge of this, where caregivers were scheduled for their vaccine, and then it was dropped with no date laid out into the future. Can you not understand how difficult that is, A, for all the people that are worried and looking for these vaccines, and B, for a province to manage? Can there not be a greater level of transparency on what is the plan on the layout? It must be in the contracts.
Oh, well, listen, MP Cumming through the chair, absolutely. Every step of the way, we've been transparent with provinces and territories, even when the news is not good. And so when Pfizer and Moderna needed to reduce shipments to increase production, we were immediately clear with the provinces and territories about that disappointing news. It is obviously short term, but nonetheless, I can fully understand why that is very stressful for those on the ground waiting for the vaccines. Now, having said that, that is our assurance to the provinces and territories that we will be open, we will be transparent, and as soon as we have information, whether it's a reduction in doses or whether it's the resumption of doses, whether it's a delivery schedule from a pharmaceutical company coming on board with the ability to produce doses, we will be clear with provinces and territories and give them the information they need to plan ahead.
We have outstanding scientists working in the vaccine development and on therapeutics. And one of the things we've heard from them is how slow the government has been to get behind some of these vaccines. You suggested that the vaccine task force has played a big role in this, but they didn't actually come into play and quite late into the game. Why wasn't it put into place earlier? And should we not have looked at internal vaccine development and funding of vaccine development earlier in the game in a more substantive way, rather than the trickle of capital that they received?
Well, I can't speak to the decisions on the innovation, science, economic development end, and I would suggest that those are good questions for Minister Champagne about how decisions were made. But I will just say the Vaccine Task Force has been providing advice prior to any vaccine submitting for regulatory review. In fact, the candidates that they've selected, as I've mentioned, 5 of them now have applied for regulatory approval. 2 of them have been approved. And in fact, one was a Canadian company, Medicago, who is showing a great degree of promise, as I've mentioned before. So I'm very grateful for the early and very thorough work of the Vaccine Task Force that I think has put Canada in good stead.
Would you not acknowledge that comparative to the companies that you've written purchase orders to, that Canadian vaccine development is well behind the curve comparative to those that you've written purchase orders to?
I would just say that including a Canadian developer was important to the Vaccine Task Force for the purpose of building our biomanufacturing capacity. And so that is why, in fact, Canadian companies are included. This company had promised. It was also a way to invest in the company. It was a way to start to rebuild that footprint of biomanufacturing that is so important for health security.
I want to come back to this manufacturing. Mr. Stewart, it strikes me, have I got time?
3 seconds, unfortunately. We will have time for another round with the Deputy Minister if you'd like.
Okay, I'll yield. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we have MP Jacek. You have the floor for 5 minutes.
Well, thank you very much, Chair. And my first question is to Mr. Stewart. Mr. Stewart, how is PHAC keeping track of vaccinations given across Canada? Is there a national database that's recording first dose, second dose? There may come a time when Canadians may want to travel and they may need to produce proof of vaccination. I won't call it an immunity passport, of course, but how is PHAC looking at that particular data set?
That's an excellent question. And we're very much looking at this idea of some kind of vaccination certification documentation. As people are immunized, it'll be increasingly needed. So it's a great point. As you know, it has been discussed here today, provinces and territories are the ones administering the vaccination on the ground. And each of them have a documentation system for tracking who was immunized and tracking who needs a second dose. And then what we've been doing with them is creating a sharing of that data. And that data, as it comes into us, we have been putting up on our website. And when it comes to negative aspects, for instance, an adverse effect, there's a well-established network to communicate as quickly as possible that something has occurred. Fortunately, so far, there have been very few instances of problems. So there is a well-developed system in place, and through the National Operations Center, we're make that information transparent to each of the jurisdictions participating in the campaign.
Thank you. And now, Minister Hajdu, it's been quite a year for you, and Personally, I would like to simply say thank you for all your answers here today, for what you've done over the last year, remaining calm and thoughtful, and responding to so many different questions. But obviously, over the last year, there have been lessons learned. And I wonder if you could kind of summarize for us uh, as we go beyond the pandemic and applying some of the lessons that you've learned as Minister of Health. Are there areas where you can see within the ministry, within the many agencies that relate to the ministry, where there's need for improved staffing, areas where we could have benefited perhaps from increased data, anything that you've learned that will be put to good use going forward?
Thank you very much for the kind words. And yes, we are actually conducting a lessons learned broader review, as you know, in terms of the entire pandemic process. I will just say personally, and I've said this before publicly, so it won't come as a surprise to any of my colleagues, but as someone who worked in public health for 9 years prior to politics with the Thunder Bay District Health Unit, and I know MP Jacek, that you were also a Minister of Health at the provincial level. Public health, that is the things that we've all come to know now, contact tracing, protection, prevention, promotion, is often dramatically under-recognized as critically important to the health of a community. We spend a lot of money on physical delivery of health, healthcare systems, hospitals, doctors, all of the kinds of stuff that we think of when we see health. But public health typically, if lucky, might get 2% of a healthcare budget in any province or territory, maybe a bit more, maybe a bit less. And it plays a pivotal role in protecting the health of citizens. And I would say at the federal level, we are looking now at ways that we can ensure that the Public Health Agency of Canada has a robust footprint here within the family of departments and agencies, because that prevention and protection role that public health has played for centuries is incredibly important.
And just very quickly, you mentioned contact tracing as a key element of prevention and public health practice. The federal government has assisted provinces with personnel able to help with contact tracing. Could you just quickly tell us what that has consisted of?
Absolutely. We've assisted provinces and territories not only with contact tracing through, for example, trained contact tracers at Statistics Canada, but we've also assisted them with many other supports to deliver healthcare in their according to their responsibilities. So Red Cross supports in long-term care homes, epidemiological and other research expertise. I see the red flag, but we've been there for provinces and territories, not just with the Safe Restart 19 billion, but actually tangible supports in communities that are experiencing significant crises.
Thank you so much. And that ends our third round of questions and the time that we have with Minister Hajdu and Minister Stewart. I want to thank you both for being with us today. I understand that the Deputy Minister will remain for the last 18 minutes of committee so he can answer any additional questions from committee members. But I want to thank you both for your hard work and thank your teams. And thank you again for being here today to answer all of our questions. We greatly appreciate it. With that, we will start the next round of questions. With respect to, we will start with a 5-minute round. MP Généreux, you have the floor for 5 minutes.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Other Canadian companies had potentially expressed interest to forge a relationship with some companies. For example, Bell Therapeutics in Alberta said that they could produce mRNA vaccines and they were ready to start clinical trials if an agreement hadn't been reached with Pfizer and Moderna. Do you think that they could be involved in production like Pfizer and Moderna, for example?
Indicate is that the government has entered into a series of contracts for vaccine procurement, as has been noted. That said, work continues in supporting Canadian firms, as Minister Champagne and officials can indicate. Health Canada plays its important role from a regulatory perspective, and we've recently approved clinical trial for the Providence Therapeutic vaccine candidate, as noted, and we'll work with the company as they proceed with their clinical development program.
La compagnie Sanofi, qui a une usine en Ontario aussi, espérait également développer son propre vaccin au cours de la dernière.
Sanofi also wanted to develop a vaccine this year, and unfortunately, it didn't work. But now they're discussing with Pfizer to help produce vaccines. Is the government considering making the vaccines here instead of importing them from Belgium?
Previously, the government is focused on the contracts to provide vaccines to Canadians, as has been discussed, but as well through the leadership of Minister Champagne, advancing work on biomanufacturing, and I'm sure he will be more than pleased to respond to questions pertaining to that work to strengthen that capacity looking forward.
Alors, prochaine question, Monsieur Lucas.
All right, next question goes to Mr. Lucas. Can you tell us a bit more about the vaccines that are currently being studied? Moderna has been accepted. AstraZeneca is under review. So where are they in the approval process? Johnson & Johnson, as well as Novavax. Well, Novavax is planning to produce vaccines in Canada after the summer, but where are Medicago and Sanofi in the approval process?
In responding, we have rolling submissions from AstraZeneca submitted in October, Johnson & Johnson or Janssen submitted in late November, and as of last Friday, a submission from Novavax.
Madame la Présidente, la traduction ne se fait pas.
And I'm sorry, we're not getting interpretation.
Je pense que c'est plus clair comme ça. Merci beaucoup.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Obviously, just starting the Novavax rolling submission now with their initial data provided. And by contrast, as I had noted previously, we're at the final stage of our review of the AstraZeneca submission and working closely with the company for the remaining information that will allow us to complete our review of that in the very short term.
Monsieur Lucas, je vais revenir sur la question.
Mr. Lucas, I'm going to go back to Mr. Davis's question. He asked why the contracts that were signed with Health Canada and with the Canadian government that you know about, because contract conditions are directly related to what your department can and cannot do. Well, your department is involved in approvals, so why hasn't the Canadian government divulged the contents of these contracts?
Previously, Minister Anand will be appearing before the committee. We have to respond very specifically. We have a very, very significant amount of information up on the Canada.ca coronavirus website. I would indicate further that in regard to the regulatory decisions, scientific summary basis of decision is posted, the product monograph, further information on the authorization and the clinical data associated with the development of the vaccines will also be posted further to our strong commitment to transparency.
Thank you so much. Our next round of questions goes to MP Erskine Smith. You have the floor for 5 minutes.
Thanks very much, Madam Chair. And I want to pick up where I left off, that question of what more can we do as it relates to contact tracing, as it relates to testing, as it relates to supporting individuals in need before we have full vaccination across this country. And narrowing in specifically on rapid tests, how many rapid tests have we delivered to the provinces?
So in regard to, Madam Chair, in regard to rapid tests, as of January 31st, we had delivered 17,686,000 rapid tests to the provinces. That includes the Abbott ID Now, as well as antigen tests by several manufacturers.
And my understanding from media reports is that Ontario, as an example, which is where I am, has used only a fraction of the rapid tests that it has received. Given I have sat in the House of Commons in question period, and I have felt that insistence myself to say we need more rapid testing until we have a vaccine rollout in a fuller way. Why is it? I mean, you're in communication with your provincial counterparts. Why is it that they're not using the rapid tests that have been delivered to them?
Madam Chair, I first note that it is critically important, as noted, that public health measures coupled with testing and screening, contact tracing and isolation of cases and contacts, as well as vaccination, all continue in the work to control the pandemic. In regard to working with the provinces and territories, we have worked very closely in terms of providing information on the use of those tests, provided guidance in October, have established four to work on understanding how they can be used and sharing lessons learned. The use of the tests is increasing day by day. For example, in the fall, Nova Scotia used the antigen tests in pop-up settings associated with some bars and restaurants downtown to test people and to good work. Ontario has worked with them in workplace settings with employers. And so we're seeing that in work increase, and through providing the tests, guidance, and establishing through convening provinces and territories with experts a means of doing that. And I would just conclude saying, as well, we've provided further guidance through the expert panel on testing and screening that Minister Haidu convened, and they released a report recently.
I'm familiar. Yeah, so I'm familiar with that report. The co-chair, Dr. Irfan Dalla, is brilliant. He happens to be a constituent, and he said we need the federal government to procure more of them. We need the federal government to approve more of them, and then we need the provincial governments to support the more rapid use and wide-scale use of them. Do you agree with that statement?
Yes, Madam Chair, we are working to procure more tests. We have further ones in our regulatory pipeline and working closely, as I noted, with the provinces and territories to encourage and support in all regards their use, as well as with other interested parties to support their use for screening as well as testing purposes.
And as it relates to screening, I want to narrow in specifically as we look at reopening our schools. And here in Ontario, here in Toronto, a hotspot, the provincial government has not been so clear with parents about how schools are to be reopened. One would think, though, what we know today is that you would have a clear rapid testing regime using screening to say for teachers and potentially even for students multiple times a week. You're going to have sufficient rapid testing to screen the individuals who are having to go into the workplace. And have those conversations been active with the province of Ontario? And if so, do we have enough rapid tests at scale for that kind of reopening to happen?
Madam Chair, we are, as noted, working with the provinces on different use cases. Some of them are indeed looking at schools or universities as settings for screening on an ongoing or regular basis. We're working with them in terms of understanding that demand and have proactively procured tens of millions of rapid antigen tests, for example, to address those and other settings.
And the last question, I suppose, just on human resources. There was some media reporting in relation to tens of thousands of Canadians have stepped up to serve as it relates to contact tracing or otherwise, but have not been put to full use. Can you give an update to this committee of where those efforts are at and how Canadians can step up to support these efforts?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And indeed, in the spring, Health Canada launched a national volunteer recruitment initiative and had extraordinary support from Canadians. It was followed up and information provided to the provinces, for example, for support in long-term care. We've gone back to people in the inventory to confirm interest and are working again with the provinces on people who may be interested, for example, in helping out in the vaccination campaign in functions where their experience and qualifications would support it.
Thank you so much. Our next round of questions goes to Député Lemire. Vous avez 2 minutes et demie.
You have 2.5 minutes. Thank you, Madam Chair. I would like to go back to Medicago. Can you please confirm this? This company from Quebec would be unable to commercialize their vaccine before September, even if they had your agency's green light, the Public Health Agency's approval.
As I believe I noted earlier, Medicago has was identified as a strong candidate and recommended by the vaccine task force in terms of entering into a advanced procurement agreement, which has been done. They've as well submitted 2 clinical trials to Health Canada, an initial one submitted in July for an initial phase 1 trial, and then subsequently in early November their clinical trial for phase 2-3 stages with a larger population. They have an additional clinical trial underway in the United States, and this clinical development program will help provide the evidence for them to build their dossier for regulatory submission to Health Canada.
Donc, s'ils sont prêts avant le mois de septembre.
If they are ready before September, they will be able to distribute their vaccine and vaccinate people before September, correct?
Chair, the approach for regulatory authorization requires a rigorous set of stages, starting with preclinical research, including in animal models, the initial phase 1 trials in a small group of volunteers, which was authorized for Medicago in July, as I noted. And with those results, Medicago proceeded to the next stage, which was their combined phase 2, phase 3 trial, where they intend, through participation in Canada as well as the United States, to enroll over 30,000 adult participants. All of these stages, coupled with their work to define their manufacturing process and ensure good manufacturing practices, will contribute to their dossier, and we continue to work with the company to encourage their regulatory.
Can you confirm that there are no agreements that would prevent Medicago from distributing their vaccine before September if their vaccine was recognized as effective?
That is dependent on Medicago, Madam Chair, in terms of when they complete their work, submit a rolling submission to us, and as we go through that and review it, that will determine the timeline, as we have done with other companies such as Pfizer and Moderna.
Thank you very much. And our last round of questions goes to MP Davies. You have the
Merci.
floor for 2.5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Lucas, did you have any meetings with any pharmaceutical companies in November and December to discuss their request to delay Patented Medicine Prices Review Board regulatory reform?
Madam Chair, I did not have any such meetings.
I'm wondering if you can help with this. Do you know why the government postponed PMPRB reforms for the 3rd time last month that would, by Health Canada's own estimates, save Canadians billions of dollars in pharmaceutical costs over the next 10 years?
Madam Chair, the context we're working in, of course, is the pandemic. It impacted the timelines for the development of the guidelines by the Patented Medicines Price Review Board, which were developed through consultation. Those were finalized in the mid part of the fall, and the government took a decision to delay the coming into force to ensure that the guidelines were in place and understood to support the implementation of the PMPRB regulations.
To your knowledge, was there any implication?
Y avait-il des implications, directement ou indirectement?
Was there any implication or threat, indirect or direct, by the pharmaceutical companies that they may that it will interfere with vaccine access if the PMPRB reforms went ahead?
Madam Chair, as I stated, the decision was taken on the basis of wanting to ensure time to respond to the guidelines, which were finalized through an extended process during the context of the pandemic in 2020, such that they could come into force at the beginning of July 2021.
Thank you. My final question, we know that this is a global pandemic and that we're all affected by it. We know India and South Africa have put forward a proposal at the WTO to exempt member countries from enforcing traditional patents, trade secrets, and pharmaceutical monopolies. In other words, make the vaccine available to all countries. In your view, should Canada support that proposal?
Madam Chair, I will not be in a position to comment specifically on the details of that proposal in regard to my detailed knowledge. But what I would say is Canada has strongly supported the accelerator facility developed with the WHO and the COVAX facility to ensure that countries around the world can have access to the vaccines that are going to be so essential for our recovery from the pandemic.
Thank you so much. And with that, that ends our time today. I'd like to thank Mr. Lucas for your time today, and I'd like to thank of course, our translators, IT analysts, our clerk for their support. On Thursday, we have Ministers Anand and Minister Champagne with us to further answer questions. And seeing the interest in procurement, I suggest all members who will be participating in that meeting to be on early so that we can get through the sound check so that we can start our meeting on time and make sure everyone gets an opportunity to ask the questions that they have. We also have an update that we will have the vaccine task force coming with us on the week of the 15th, and we'll have further updates that will be circulated with the clerk. With that, I call the meeting adjourned. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup. Merci à tous.